Lonzo Ball, spot up three, right wing. Jackson Hayes with the play, two-hand dunk. Now Ingram right to the top for three rings. Welcome back, Biot.
What's up, Pelicans fans? Basketball is back, and that means so are we. Welcome into the Pelicans preview show presented by Smoothie King. I'm Caroline Gonzalez. We are just about an hour away from tonight's tip-off as the Pelicans take on the Milwaukee Bucks in their final scrimmage before heading into their seeding games. You can watch tonight's game on Fox Sports New Orleans. Joel Myers, Antonio Daniels, and Jen Hale will have the call of tonight's game. Of course, I can't do this alone. Let's go ahead and welcome in Pelicans radio play-by-play announcer, Todd Guarini. Todd, you and I have spent the last two scrimmages in the Smoothie King Center together, socially distanced with our masks on. I know basketball is back and you are loving it. Tell me, Todd, what have been your thoughts about what the NBA has been able to do since the NBA restart?
Well, first of all, Caroline, it's great to be on the show, and it's been great to be with you and Daniel and John DeShazer and Joe Cardosi, just to be back with the crew. I mean, that's one of the things that you really miss is just hanging out with everybody and talking hoops during the season. And obviously we weren't able to do that for the last 4.5 months. So that's really the first thing that comes to mind. But I don't think that you could say anything negative about what the NBA has done because of the simple fact, Caroline, that we're playing basketball. So the premise of going into the bubble and quarantining and then getting out and going to practice, it's all coming to fruition. Now, knock on wood, we've got another scrimmage game to play before we get started for real on Thursday. But so far, so good. And it's just, it's nice to know that the 100-page protocol book and everything that was coming into play before this started, the plan is working. And I guess the bottom line is guys are taking it seriously inside the bubble, and that's why these games are being played without a hitch.
What have you thought about the overall ambiance of the arena, with the screens, with the graphics in the background, with the fans, the virtual fans, the social distancing benches? What have you thought about that and maybe the effect that it has or doesn't have maybe on play?
Well, they're doing as best they can, I mean, with no fans. And we heard Alvin Gentry a couple of weeks ago talking to the media about how people are going to be pleasantly surprised. I think they've done as good a job as they possibly can when you consider the arena situations that they're in the bubble, just trying to make it feel as close to home with the designated home teams as you can. We're going to get the virtual fans when the seeding games begin with the screens around the court. So we'll see what happens, but we're getting an effects feed. We're getting the PA, we're getting the music over the loudspeakers. And I think so far in the two games that we have seen, the players themselves that are socially distant on the bench, it almost looks like they're in a movie theater, the way it's set up, but they're providing as much energy as they can from the bench. So, look, fans are the lifeblood of any sporting event. It gives the players motivation. It gives them adrenaline, but they're not going to be there. So you have to make do. And so far the players are providing their own energy. And I think we've seen that, especially from the Pelicans in the two games that we've watched. They've come out with a lot of energy. So that's something that you can take as a big time positive.
Before we get into tonight's game, Todd, let's get everyone caught up on the Pelicans so far since the restart. They took down the Brooklyn Nets in their first scrimmage. It was all Pelicans in that matchup with the final score 99-68. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, the rookie, had 14 points. In Saturday's matchup, the Pelicans took on the Denver Nuggets. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the highlights from that game.
Pelicans and Nuggets playing a scrimmage down at the campus at Disney, and we start you off with a story that keeps going. Bol, look at the gorgeous stroke, one of 2 threes on the game for him as he knocks that one down. Later, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, nice little move to get himself open for the layup there, and New Orleans up by 14 at that point. Later, New Orleans working it around and inside to Derek Favors, who stuffs that one home. and the lead's at 13. We move into the second half now, and the Nuggets go to Jeremy Grant. Jeremy Grant working on his game. Who knew he had this in his toolkit? Little Dirk fadeaway goes down, and Denver trying to hang close. This is just a gorgeous pass from Nikola Jokic to a cutting Bol, who throws it down. He had 15 points on the game, and there's that no-look dish again from Jokic to set him up. Alexander Walker back with the ball and getting to the basket again. Strong move going with the left, and New Orleans up by 13 at that point. Then Jackson Hayes off the pick rolls to the hole and hangs in the air to lay that one in. Watch the roll again, aggressive to the basket, up and around Bol for the lay-in, and in the end, too much from New Orleans. They get the win 119-104.
Todd, those young players absolutely blew me away on Saturday. You talk about Frank Jackson, Jackson Hayes, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They were at their best, it seemed, on Saturday night. What was your thoughts on Saturday night's performance out of the Pelicans?
The same, Caroline. The young guys really carried the day. And look, the way that the minutes have been distributed by the starters in the first two scrimmage games, you had to see those younger guys get a ton of minutes. We haven't seen any of the regulars, if you will, go more than 14, 15 minutes in the first two games against Brooklyn and then against Denver. So the young guys are playing a lot of minutes. They're contributing. We're seeing the ball movement, 37 more assists on Saturday night against the Denver Nuggets. That's exactly the way Alvin Gentry wants the team to play, with pace, and it doesn't matter who's on the floor, be it the second unit or even some of the third unit, if you will. So it's good to know that the philosophy doesn't change, even though the personnel might change later on in the game. And it's going to be a very interesting question to see which one of these guys actually steps into the rotation when the seeding games begin, because as you well know, when we hit the hiatus on March 11th, we were pretty much down to an 8-9 man rotation night after night. And remember, JJ Redick had not played the previous 2 weeks. So once these games begin, the rotations are going to shrink. Now, who is going to take up the minutes is, to me, going to be the burning question coming out of the final scrimmage against Milwaukee, heading into the opener against Utah on Thursday. Which one of these young guys is going to crack the rotation into the lineup? And that's something that Alvin Gentry and the staff are going to have to figure out. But it's just good to know something that we have preached since day one in this team, Caroline, is the Pelicans have a lot of depth, and we're seeing it again. And here's another question. Do you consider Nickeil Alexander-Walker or Jackson Hayes or even Zion, when he returns to the lineup, are those guys rookies anymore? I mean, it's been 4.5 months since they played a game. So, in theory, I guess they should be starting their second season in the league, even though it's the end of their first.
Yeah, Todd, it certainly seemed like we fit 3 or 4 seasons into this one season. But another benefit of the hiatus for the Pelicans was that they got a lot of guys back healthy on their roster. JJ Redick coming back from that hamstring, Kenrich Williams with his back, and then Nickeil Alexander-Walker with his wrist injury. So good to have those guys back on the Pelicans roster and healthy. All right, Todd, let's go ahead and switch gears. It's time now for our squad goals presented by Zatarans. After seeing the first 2 scrimmages, Todd, can you tell me some of the keys for tonight's game against the Milwaukee Bucks?
Well, number one, Caroline, and again, knock on wood, Captain Obvious here, but let's get out of this healthy and ready to go for Thursday against the Utah Jazz. That being said, the real key to me tonight, and it's funny because John DeShazer and I were talking exactly about this when we left the Smoothie King Center after the Denver game. How are the minutes going to be distributed? Because we have not seen the starters, the regulars, if you will, go a whole lot. I think Drew Holiday played 16 minutes against Brooklyn. That's the most that any starter has played. But when we get into Thursday and the games count, and remember, the Pelicans can't limp into this thing. They got to go full speed ahead. You've got 8 games to try to win as many as possible. So are the starters going to play 10 to 15 minutes against Milwaukee and then ramp it up to about 25? I mean, you would think the starters are going to go probably 25 to 30 minutes against Utah when the games really count. So how Alvin Gentry is going to distribute the minutes for the starters, to me, is the burning question that's going to be answered when the Milwaukee game begins. And look, you're going to see guys coming off the bench because you're going to want to get them in there as well. But are you going to see Jackson Hayes play 30 minutes? How many minutes will Derek Favors play? Remember, he didn't play the first game against Brooklyn and then played about 15 against Denver. So how the minutes are distributed to me is going to be the key to tonight as you ramp up for Thursday and the Utah Jazz in the first seeding game.
We'll hear more from Todd in just a bit, but let's go ahead and go inside the bubble and hear from our own Pelicans player. It's time now for our Sound Up presented by Beats by Dre.
Our guys, I didn't hear any complaints from our guys. No complaint about the shooting situation or the lighting in the shooting.
For me, it's just basketball. I mean, it's kind of easy to play that. It's like playing, your whole life you've been playing outside, playing in gyms with nobody there, open gym. So it was just fun. Just go out there and just hoop and, just have fun. It was like 2K. I've been telling all my friends that it feels like a 2K game. But like I said, we're out there playing the game we love, and, that's all we really can ask for. I had to deal with us just, getting to play again. Even if it was a scrimmage, I think guys were happy to be there, happy to be on the court, and, just having fun.
It's nice to be back. It's nice to be back on the court with the team. It was the first game after several months, and I think we did a pretty good job. And I think we did a good game, and we're happy to be back, and let's see what's the next game brings.
Well, we still have a long ways to go, of course. Everybody's young. Everybody's getting to know each other. I think this is our first year together, so everything is coming together. We're going to get better and better as time goes on.
I think we just got to use this last week, to keep getting better and then go from there. Our game's on the 30th, so that's the due date for us. We got to hit the ground running.
We've been beating up on each other for about 10 days straight, so to beat on somebody else and play against somebody else is fun for us.
To be completely honest, I think practices were a little bit tougher because coach is making us going up and down like crazy.
Our 5-on-5 practices are way more intense than probably any game we'll ever play in. There's people yelling at each other, just calling each other out, going at each other, so I don't think it can really get much more intense than that.
Great stuff there. Let's bring Todd in for one of our favorite segments. It's our Twitter Takeover powered by Chevron. Todd, you get to be asked some questions from our favorite Pelicans fans. You ready for them?
Let's do this, Caroline. I live for this.
All right, from @HoopinSteven, who do you think has to step up the most in these 8 games?
That is such a difficult question. I'm going to go with Nicolo Melli, and I'm going to tell you why. Because when he steps out and starts making threes, it becomes a matchup nightmare for Pelicans opponents, because if you go out and get him, that leaves the paint area wide open. And then, of course, you've got Zion down in the block and Favors, and then you've got Ingram out on the wing. So I think we've seen this year when the Pelicans are at their best, it's when Nicolo Melli is shooting the ball lights out. So I'm not saying he has to step up, just saying he needs to, because he already has been playing very well prior to the hiatus. But if he can continue that consistent outside shooting, that is a big time boost for New Orleans.
All right, Todd, next one, @Flights No Feelings, a motto that I try to live by. Who are you more impressed with, Nah or Frank Jackson?
Good question. Last night, you could almost call it a dead heat, but I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker has just shown the confidence that we saw way back when the season started. Of course, as the year went on, he had a bit of a confidence problem, and then eventually he went to the G League. But since the layoff and since he got healthy again, we've seen that confidence come back in the first 2 scrimmages. And of course, he's never shy about putting them up. He attempted 19 shots against Denver, but that tells me he's not shy about doing it in the first place. So, but I like what Frank has done too. Remember though, Frank's been in the league. This is his second season. So he naturally would have a more confident type of persona just because he's been there before. But Nickeil Alexander-Walker in the first two scrimmages has shown to us what the players have talked about in the first couple of weeks of the summer camp, if you will, when those guys have been in the bubble, that most of the players have been impressed with what Nickeil's been doing.
It's nice to see the lefty in Nickeil as well. This one, Todd, is from James Chambers. Do you think having the time off to reflect helped the younger guys come back with a new perspective on how to play at this level? Nah and Jackson have looked really good in the scrimmages.
I think absolutely. And if you listen to those guys, they spend a lot of their time watching film and figuring out how they can improve their game. So remember, we have had, before that first scrimmage game against Brooklyn, it was longer than a normal NBA offseason when you're talking about going from the finals that were supposed to be in June till training camp starts in October. It's been that long. So in essence, they've had an offseason. So that's what you look for when you're going from your first year to your second year. That's when you see the biggest improvement.
All right, Todd, last one, best one. This one's from Corey. What is the toughest game on the Pelicans schedule? Go Pelicans.
All right. Well, to me, the toughest games are going to be against Memphis, against Sacramento, and against San Antonio, because they all have something to play for. Memphis is trying to stay in the 8th spot. We're going head-to-head with Sacramento, going to play them twice. We have exactly the same record. And, of course, San Antonio is in the same boat. And when you're playing all these teams, Caroline, that are already in the playoffs, who knows what their personnel is going to be as the games move along? Who's going to sit for the Clippers when we play them in Game 2? We know possibly that Lou Williams isn't going to be in there, but is Kawhi Leonard going to have a seat after he plays in the Laker game? Will he play in the Laker game? So those teams that are already in the playoffs are basically just trying to fine tune for when the playoffs start for real. But those games that the Pelicans are going up against when you're in direct competition for a playoff spot, those are going to be the toughest games because no one's going to take those nights off.
Nice job, Todd. Let's go ahead and go back inside the bubble to our own Alvin Gentry as he was masked up and mic'd up inside the NBA bubble. Let's go ahead and check out the first episode of The Bubble Beat.
Really kind of a player development thing, so they're working on technique as much as anything. Zion and those guys, same thing. We're just working on some dribble penetration things, screen and roll, catching it, and then making plays out of the roll man making plays out of catching it in traffic right there. I bet 100 on it. I got 100 on it. There's one of them. There's two of them. See? Absolutely no reason that you shouldn't be an 80% foul shooter. Doesn't get any better. And with your dribble penetration, there should be no reason why you're not shooting at least 5 foul shots a game. Yeah. So that's your goal, okay? 80%, 5 a game, okay? You know, they're getting shots in, but we want them to shoot the game shots. And so we want them to go just like they would shoot it in the game. And then we want them to, from a technique standpoint, to make sure that we're going straight up and down, not drifting on our shots, that we're getting them off early, and that we're shooting them like as if someone is running to challenge them in the game.
I thought our guys did a good job. I thought they were really locked in from a focus standpoint and just did a really, really good job today.
Great insight there from head coach Alvin Gentry, as always. All right, we are counting down the minutes until tonight's tip-off against the Milwaukee Bucks. As always, you can watch on Fox Sports New Orleans, and of course, you can listen to the radio broadcast on ESPN New Orleans 100.3 FM or the Pelicans app. Todd, speaking of upcoming games, it is time now to go into our Who's Got Next segment presented by Hancock Whitney Bank. To kick off the 8-game seeding matchups, the Pelicans will take on the Utah Jazz. Todd, what are you looking for in that game against the Utah Jazz?
Looking for more of the same, the last 2 games between these 2 teams. Again, I mentioned in the segment prior, we saw 2 classics at the Smoothie King Center between these 2, just hotly contested, tight, and literally down to the final buzzer in both of those games. Again, we saw Brandon Ingram go off in that second game, the overtime win. He had a career-high 49 points. Donovan Mitchell had 45. He has been spectacular against the Pelicans in the 3 matchups. So matchup-wise, Drew Holiday defensively against Donovan Mitchell offensively. I mean, you want to see the lockdown defender Drew kind of take it to Mitchell, neutralize him. What's Rudy Gobert going to do? He always seems to be in the mix against New Orleans. Remember this, though. If Zion Williamson does play against Utah, the Jazz have not seen him this year. So how do they match up against Zion if he is back in the lineup? That's going to be something that's going to be a big-time storyline heading into the game on Thursday night. Also remember, Bojan Bogdanovic is not in Orlando for the Utah Jazz. He has absolutely hurt the Pelicans this year. That first win for Utah in the Smoothie King Center, the 2-point win for Utah, he had 35 points in that game with no assists and no rebounds. I don't know how that's humanly possible. He found a way to do it. The fact of the matter is he filled up the score sheet as far as points. That's a big loss for the Utah Jazz on an offensive side. So can the Pelicans take advantage of that? We'll see. But the Pels really need to come out of the gates on fire. I mean, you got to get that first win as we start the season again.
Man, that was such a fun night in the Smoothie King Center. Certainly a heavyweight match between Brandon Ingram and Donovan Mitchell. Todd, thanks so much for joining us. Have a great call.
Caroline, great to be here, and look forward to the rest of the seeding games, and go Pels.
Well, Pelicans fans, we know you miss being in the stands for games. I know I certainly do, but this gives us an opportunity to give you angles like you have never seen before inside the NBA bubble. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the best views of the week in our bird's eye views. Thanks to everyone for joining us on this edition of Pelicans Preview. We'll be doing this for all of the Pelicans seeding game, continuing on Thursday night as the Pelicans get set to take on the Utah Jazz for their first seeding game. I'll be welcoming on my co-host John DeShazier as a guest on Pelicans Preview. You don't want to miss it. All right, let's get set for tip-off. You can watch tonight's game on Fox Sports New Orleans. Of course, you can listen on ESPN New Orleans 100.3 FM or listen in on the Pelicans app. Let's get you fired up for tip-off.